Excited to be here. Come on, make some noise. How about this section over here? You guys excited to be here? How about this section? Woo! Welcome to week 3 of the collective. My name is Libin Abraham, and I'm so thrilled and pumped to be here tonight with you. Get the great joy of being one of the pastors here at Sugar Creek. Hey, last Tuesday night was pretty awesome. We had some good food trucks, sizzling gyros. You guys enjoy that? And some hot dogs or tacos, whatever we had. A bunch of you, I think, came just for that, but I'm glad you came back. I loved meeting so many new people last Tuesday night, and it was just great to hear a lot of stories. And so many of the people I met, they came because one of you invited them. So give yourselves a hand for inviting a bunch of people last week, and let's keep doing that because you never know the power of an invite. When you pray for somebody, when God puts somebody in your way in your life, and you just extend simply an invitation to be a part of something. I believe with all my heart that when we come into a room like this, anything is possible because we are not just coming into an empty space, we're coming to meet with the God of the universe, and where He is present, anything is possible. We just began a series on the weekends talking about revival, and you look back at any of the major revivals that's taken place, it started with your generation and my generation. It started with 20-something, mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s. It started when young people got so hungry for God, they began to express their need for Jesus and invite others into it. The world was never the same again. So I pray that we are on the brink of something incredible with young adults here in the southwest region of Houston and all around Houston. If you're watching online, we welcome you tonight. We're so grateful that you are joining us via technology, and if you can ever make it into person, we would love for you to be here one of our Tuesday nights. On week 2 of this series that we began last week, I want to simply communicate, express this idea to you that grace rewrites your story. Grace rewrites your story. A lot of times I think we have a hard time understanding grace because our world functions in everything but grace. Like we get spooked when somebody pays for your meal, right? Like somebody does a pay it forward thing. You're like, this is so extraordinary. This is unusual because everything about our world functions in the opposite of grace, which I really think is performance. Works, you got to earn it. Like for instance, if you're in college, you're taking the SATs. I don't know if y'all still take SATs in college now, but it's based on a number that certain colleges are opened up to you. Our motto in our culture, if you work hard, if you do good, if you put in this many hours, this determines the reward, the paycheck you get. And if you slack off, there's serious consequences to your actions. So this world revolves around the idea of performance that is rewarded. So when the Bible says we are saved by grace through faith, it's like we have no context by which we understand that. Because God's saying, look, you can never perform enough. You can never do enough good works or good deeds to receive or achieve this good standing with me. So here is the free gift of forgiveness on the account of Jesus Christ. Here is salvation. Here is heaven. Here is a relationship with the God of the universe, all based on grace. And that's the heart of the gospel. Because when Jesus came onto the scenes of planet Earth 2,000 years ago, He could have came with new rules and new regulations. He could have said, you know what, you guys have messed up the 10 commandments. Let's just give you 5 new commandments. A mild version of the 10 commandments. Better luck this time. No. Jesus didn't do any of that. He didn't come full of rules. John says that Jesus came full of grace and He came full of truth. He came full of grace and He came full of truth. And tonight, as we behold who God is, and the whole idea is to recenter our hearts on Him, on the beauty of God's grace, on the beauty and the wonder of who Jesus is. We've all had our eyes on 100 different places over the last several months, but this few weeks is to help us recenter and refocus our heart, our affection, our passion back on King Jesus. And tonight, we're going to peer into a story of a woman who met Jesus sitting at the well. And when she met Jesus, she met grace for the very first time. She met the kindness of God, the mercy of God, the grace of God for the first time. Let me tell you, when I met God's grace for the first time, it totally changed my life. I grew up as a pastor's kid. I grew up in church, first to get there, last to leave. And I really had built this great system of religion thinking, hey, if I did these things, I'm good. But there are some days that I knew I blew it. And let me tell you, I was drowning in guilt and shame. But when I encountered that I'm saved by grace, not because of what I've done, not of myself, but it's a gift of God, let me tell you, it changed my entire relationship with Jesus. So tonight, this young woman meets Jesus at the well in John chapter 4. Let's take a look. Verse 3 onward says it like this. He, Jesus, left Judea and went again to Galilee. He had to travel through Samaria, so he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the property that Jacob had once given to his son. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, worn out from his journey, sat down at the well, and it was about noon. Jesus sat down at the well, and it was about noon. As John is setting up the story here, he's careful to tell us which trajectory Jesus is going in. He is going from Judea to Galilee. He's traveling on our journey from Judea to Galilee. Now, let's say if you are in John's story with an iPhone, and you step into John chapter 4 and you pull out your fancy iPhone or Android, if anybody still has those things, or whatever you do, and you put in, how do I get from Judea to Galilee? You will pull up two routes. Two options, two ways you can travel. And the first one is a shorter route of 3 miles. A 3-day walk. That's the first route that'll pull up. A shorter route of 3 days. And you would think, hey, that's the easiest route to take. You go straight from Judea to Galilee. But there is a second route that will pull up. And that's a longer route of 5 days walk. 5 days versus 3 days. In the 5-day walk, you don't just go from Judea to Galilee. You got to go all around the Jordan River in order to get to Galilee. Now, if you're like me, we're going to choose the 3-day walk because I'm not about walking an extra 2 days if I don't have to. We would, of course, choose the shorter, easier route to get from point A to point B. But most Jews never chose the shorter route. They always chose the longer route, the 5-day mile hike. Why? They weren't trying to get some extra steps in. They weren't trying to make sure they completed their move goal on their iWatch. No, they were making sure that they would avoid this little town called Samaria. So they literally would walk 2 extra days all around this town, around the Jordan River, just to make sure they did not interact with anybody from this little town called Samaria. See, what had happened was over the last 7 centuries prior to this story taking place, there's been deep hostility and racial prejudice between Jews and Samaritans. Because 7 years ago, the superpower of the world was the kingdom of Assyria. And Assyria was the most evil, gruesome, heartless, cold-blooded, evil people you can imagine. They would make ISIS look like child's play. And Assyria took over the world, and they came into Israel and ruined the state of Israel. And they had 2 strategies. They were going to deport a bunch of people. Thousands of people had to leave and flee their home. And the second strategy was to bring in Assyrians into Israel and let them intermarry. So if you can't beat them, just marry them. All right? This was their strategy. Let our people marry the Israelites. And so fast forward a few decades, and the Israelites come back from the Assyrian exile, and what do they find? They find the children of the Israelites and the Assyrians, this half-breeds as they considered it. And what was amazing was they said, these people don't have the pure blood of Jews anymore. They've got the dirty, evil, filthy blood of the Assyrians who exiled us and who destroyed us. These people are ceremonially, religiously blasphemous because they don't keep our laws anymore. They don't observe our customs anymore. They are culturally deplorable because the evil, ungodly culture of the Assyrian kingdom has now infiltrated. So guess what? They began to fight each other. They would have centuries. They were at war with each other, try to take the other hour. This is the hostility of racism and prejudice that Jesus is stepping into. And by the time that Jesus gets to the scene in John 4, they're not really fighting each other. They've just decided if we would avoid each other at all costs, maybe we can have a little peace. You do you, I do me. Don't get on my roads and we won't get on your roads. Don't mess with us, we won't mess with you. Don't come near us and we won't come near you. So they had said, completely stay out of our way and we'll try to see some peace here. Well, then came Jesus onto the scene. And guess what? Jesus was woke, man. He confronted this racial and cultural prejudice head on. And Jesus said in this text, John says, he had to go through Samaria. He didn't have to go through Samaria, but he wanted to go through Samaria. He insisted on crossing every racial and cultural barrier that existed in the day. He didn't see Jews and Samaritans. He didn't see good or bad. He just saw people in need of God's grace. He didn't see the pure blood and the half-breeds. He saw desperate people who need a new beginning. He saw people equal in need of God's incredible grace. Let me tell you, young adults, tonight, there is a world that's trying to sell you an isolated narrative in order to do whatever they can to pin you against somebody else. Whatever news feed you look at, whatever channel you constantly tune into, they're selling you an isolated narrative with an agenda to turn you against somebody else. So if you don't look like this, if you don't come from the socioeconomic background, if you don't have this story in your background, if you're not this, or this, then you belong in this camp and don't you dare mix with anybody from a different camp. Don't you get along with people that disagree with you because they're the worst. We are constantly being fed an isolated narrative. But collective, we don't play by the rules of this world, amen? No, what divides the world will never divide the church. We offer Jesus equally to every single person, man and woman. We offer ourselves equally because every single person is made in the image of God. And every single one of us, no matter where you're from, what story you're living in, you and I both equally are in desperate need of the grace of Jesus Christ. So here in the story, Jesus refused to be boxed into either a Jewish condition or a Samaritan condition. And just like that, today Jesus refuses to be boxed into a Democrat agenda or a Republican agenda or independent agenda, because guess what? He exists in a box all by himself. He lives in a category called holy, and he doesn't share his platform with anybody else. And tonight, what you need to know is that Jesus isn't trying to bend who he is to adjust to culture, to adjust to our desires. He is inviting us to be transformed. He is inviting us to be radically changed into his image. Because a lot of times we want God to change into our image. But God's not having it that way. He says, here is who I am. Here's what I care about. Here are the issues, the values that I deeply care about. And I'm calling the world to adjust, to be changed, transformed into the likeness of my heart for the world. So Jesus takes what seemed to be the most unthinkable route, going straight into Samaria, the forbidden route. And it's noontime and Jesus is tired because he was human like us. So he sits literally on a well. So let's pick up the story, John 4 verse 7. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink? Will you give me a drink?" Here comes trouble. He's in a place he shouldn't be at, talking to a Samaritan he shouldn't be talking to, let alone a Samaritan woman that he really should not be talking to. So you've already got this racial tension brewing in the story as John is writing. And the readers in first century are thinking, what is Jesus doing in this town anywhere but here? And now he meets a Samaritan woman. Whoa! Ladies, it's a really good thing you weren't living in first century Samaria. Jewish men literally counted Samaritan women as of less value than their donkey. No joke, this was inscribed into their law of that day. And in fact, there was a common thought among Jewish rabbis that you should not even be caught talking to a woman in public, even if she was your wife, not even your own relative. Because at best, they said it's a waste of time, and at worst, you're committing a great evil because your attention is being diverted from studying the Torah. So as the readers are listening to the story, they're appalled, they're angry. Why is Jesus in public in Samaria talking to a Samaritan woman? But the story is about to get worse because she got some baggage. She's had a story. She's got some mess going on. Her story isn't nice, precise, and clean. Notice that the time is now noon. Imagine trying to start a basketball game or a baseball game in a day in July in Houston, and it's about 12 o'clock. We're all trying to find some shade. It is hot outside at noon, especially in Palestine under the hot sun, when the sun and the heat are at its brightest. She should not be going to the well at noon. Nobody goes to the well at noon. She would have to walk miles to get there and miles to get back under the unbearable heat in Palestine. And in fact, according to custom, everybody went to the well early in the morning or late in the evening. All the women would go together because, ladies, you like to travel and pack. I mean, you go to the restroom, an entire row is going to exit and go to the restroom. I don't know why, but I guess it's more fun to do that together. So just like what you would do in the first century, all the ladies go together in groups. They go to get water early before the sun comes up and come back before it's noon. But this woman in the story chooses to go at noon when the sun is at its hottest because she wanted to be by herself. She chose to be alone. She wanted to live in isolation because she knew that she didn't fit in. She knew that if she ever traveled in groups, they know her story, they know her baggage, they know her deep issues, and she would relive those wounds every single time. When she was with other people, she saw herself as worthless, as dirty, as someone whose story was not worthy of company. And so she here goes in the middle of the day when no one's around. Have you ever tried to avoid people so badly? You go to a party, you go to a group sometime, and somebody knows something about you, or maybe you have sent the wrong text to the wrong person about them, and you show up and you, please God, don't let me see them, anybody but them, and then they're right there. It's the worst feeling ever. I remember when I was 16 years of age, I tried to give myself a haircut. I've only done it once, and it was the worst experience of my life. I was 16, and I was trying to impress some of my buddies who were coming into town for a wedding, and I wake up on Saturday morning about to go to the wedding, and I was like, man, my hair's looking a little shaggy, so let me try to get that fresh cut on the side. So I get a razor, I'm in the mirror going at it, and it's looking good. I'm actually honestly impressed with myself. I'm doing a good job. Then I go into the danger zone and I say, let me try to trim up the top a little bit. You should never quit while I'm ahead, right? I should have never done that. So I start buzzing the top a little bit, and I forgot to comb the hair off of my head. So it's all staying there, and it's not quite as short as I want it to be, and so I just keep going in. Jump in the shower, get out, and I look, and I've got a massive bald spot literally in the center of my head. No joke. So what I should have done was bust the rest of my hair off. But that's not what I did. I'm a smart 16-year-old kid. What I did was take the remains of my hair from the trash can, sprinkle it right on top of my head, thinking if I just stood straight all day long, if I didn't get in a group, if I didn't bow down, if I didn't hug any babies, if I didn't get lower than others, nobody could tell. I'll be safe. If I just hid enough far away from people, I'll be fine. I come out of the shower and my mom has cooked up my favorite breakfast, y'all. And I love breakfast, so I get so excited. I smell, it was probably curry for breakfast, I don't know. I smell this and it looks good, it smells good. So I take a bite. All of that hair comes straight into my plate. The worst day of my life, because I wanted to be cool and I couldn't be. And now I wanted to hide from everybody and I couldn't. Man, this woman in the story is hiding from far more than what I was trying to hide from as a 16-year-old kid. She's got a lot more serious issues, so many more deeper layers of brokenness. So let's jump back into the story. Verse 9 says, the Samaritan woman said to Jesus, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How could you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is asking you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you the living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep." The well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I don't have to get thirsty again and have to keep coming back here over and over again to draw water. So he told her, go, call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you have had 5 husbands, and the man you are now living with is not your husband. What you have said is true. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. I can see that you are a prophet. As they have this conversation, she tells Jesus, you and I can be talking like this. We can't be dialoguing. We can't have this conversation. You're a Jew. I'm a Samaritan woman. She informs Jesus, you have no business with me here. Because in her mind, she was thinking, if a Jewish rabbi were to talk to a Samaritan woman like her who was unclean, then he would be made unclean. But little did she know that it was actually the opposite that was happening. When an unclean person talks to Jesus, Jesus doesn't become unclean, but they become clean. They become whole because virtue flows out of him. Mercy runs right through him. Jesus can touch a leper and he doesn't get leprosy, they get healing. He can touch a blind man and they are healed because it's his power that leaves his body, his grace that meets them. And guess what? This is the wonder of the gospel. This is what 2 Corinthians 5 verse 21 says. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. He became sin and we became righteous in him. This is the beautiful, glorious exchange of the gospel. On the cross of Jesus Christ, there is Jesus hanging there with all of his beauty and holiness and perfection and righteousness. And there is you and I, alienated from God, enemies of God, sinners in rebellion with all of our mistakes and screw-ups and all of our junk and our baggage. And what happened on the cross is this beautiful exchange. All of our sin placed on Jesus, all of our filth on him, all of our unrighteousness, rebellion, mistakes, our motives, our passions, our sin, addictions, all of it on him. And in return, we got all that he had. His beauty, his clothness of righteousness. He became sin for us so that we will become righteous in him. And for 6 hours, Jesus bore the full wrath of God on your behalf and on my behalf so that this exchange could take place, so the sinners can touch him and be made whole. She thought he was going to be unclean, but little did she know that she was going to be made clean by him. I want you to know today that Jesus isn't afraid of how messy your story is, how deep your personal well is. Jesus knew exactly the multi-layer issues that this woman faced and how deep her personal well, not just the physical well, but how well her emotional well, her relational well, her well of shame and guilt and regret, how deep that was. And knowing all of that, he pursued her, came to a town that nobody would have came to, went against all of culture and said, I want to be here. I need to meet this woman so that who I am can rub off on who she is, so that my innocence, my glory can touch her and make her whole. This woman proceeds to tell Jesus that she's coming to this well every day. Jesus says, I've got water. She says, no, you don't. I've been coming to this well every single day. In fact, my great-great-granddad Jacob built this well. Are you saying you've got something better to give me than what I'm familiar with, than what's been in my family, than the cycle I've been living through, the life I've gotten so used to? Are you saying you've got something better for me? And Jesus says, yes, the heart of the issue is simply this. You come here, you walk miles every day in the heat of the day, you draw water and you go back home, but you thirst again. And you got to repeat this cycle every single day for the rest of your life. You come, you drink, you thirst. You come, you drink, you thirst again. And the truth is that we all have some well we're drinking from every day. It could be an emotional well, a relational well. It could be an addiction you turn to every day because it gives you the fix you need. It could be religion, thinking if I check these boxes, if I do these things and don't do those things, I'm good with God, just like I did for most of my life. It could be social media where we find value and identity based on likes and reposts. It could be physical appearance. On the days we look great, we feel good. It could be the approval of others, the praises of people. It could be pornography, a website, something you look at because it gives you short-term pleasure. And you know for sure that at the end of the day, you're going to be left more empty, but you don't think you can get by that day without that short-term fix. And so you go hard at it, hoping, wanting, wishing someday this will fulfill you. We've all got some well that we've been drawing from. But what you need to know tonight is that the need you have is a soul need. It's a deep spiritual need, deeper than you could ever imagine, and you can't have physical supply trying to meet a soul need. Nothing you do in this world, no person, no habit, no website, nothing can ever meet your soul need because it's deeper than the physical. Only your soul maker can meet a soul need that you desperately need him to. Only God can fill a void deep inside of you. Every other need is a springing forth from something deep inside of you. So if you know you've got a soul need, I want to invite you to turn to your soul maker. And when you behold Jesus, what Jesus does is that he unashamedly offers himself to you as a superior source of satisfaction. He unashamedly proclaims to you, I am better than that. I am better than him, I'm better than her, I'm better than whatever you've been going to, because whatever you've been going to for short-term pleasure will give you a long-term payment. But I am better than what you've been turning to. I can satisfy you more fully. I'm offering you living water. You don't have to work for it. It's a gift of God. It's an offer of forgiveness and salvation. And he offers you eternal joy that will not fade away, all at the cost of himself. Forgiveness, true intimacy, true fulfillment. We drink from our own man-made personal wells and we'll thirst again, but you drink from Jesus and you are forever satisfied. Isaiah put it in these words, Isaiah 58 verse 11, and the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. I believe Isaiah was looking forward into the future when Jesus would meet this woman at the well and offer himself as living water, welling up to eternal life. Because Isaiah says, you've got something coming your way. The waters don't fail you. It could be a porch, it could be a scorched land, it could be dry everywhere else. But if you come to this living water, there's joy inside, there's meaning, purpose, there's something significant happening on the inside of you that cannot ever fade away. As Jesus offers himself to this woman, she tries to get into a debate, because oftentimes when we are aware of our need, we'll try to bring distraction and debates to get away from the real issue. So Jesus turns the question around and says, go get your husband. Here's where she says, I don't have one. I don't have one. Jesus says, you're right. You've actually had 5 and now you're shacking up with somebody that won't even commit to you. You're right. You got nothing to go back to. This was a mic drop moment. See, a lot of times we pin grace and truth against each other. We feel that for us to be gracious, we can't really deal with the reality. We can't call somebody out. We can't express truth. But Jesus never pinned those two things against each other. He was full of both grace and truth. Not sometimes gracious and sometimes truthful. He was always the extreme of grace and truth. In fact, in this story particularly, true grace was expressed through the pathway of truth. And sometimes some of the most gracious things you can do for people is to be truthful, call out reality, but love them in and through it. You think about this woman, man, all of her odds are stacked against her. She's a Samaritan, culturally, morally, ethnically impure. She's a woman disqualified from even meeting a rabbi or talking to a holy person. She's been with 5 men and she's living with somebody that's not her husband. And according to the custom of that day, that is just unacceptable. You get immediately crossed out and you get checked off the list. You have no place here. There's nothing to your story that makes you worthy of anything at all. And guess what? If on that day, if she had met anybody else, they would have crossed her out. They would have nudged her out of the story. They would have exited the story completely, because that's what she had been used to. But thank God on that day, she didn't just meet a good man. She didn't just meet a prophet. She didn't just meet a religious leader. She met the Son of God, who came full of grace and he came full of truth. So as soon as Jesus read her mail, she was convinced he doesn't want anything to do with me because he knows me for who I am. He knows me as I truly am. Surely he's about to walk out, because that's what the last 5 guys did. As soon as they were done with her, had used her, they left the scene, leaving her high and dry. And she's expecting the same from Jesus. Sometimes people will love you until they get to know you. They realize you're weird. I don't want to text that guy or girl. They'll ghost you as soon as they find out who you really are. And you begin to scroll on Instagram, man, what did they do? I didn't get an invite because they stopped calling you for things. And here she's expecting Jesus, now that he's articulated who she really is, to exit the scene. But in fact, he does the exact opposite. Grace drew her in. And Jesus was more interested in her than ever before. He was more for her. He was wrapping his eternal arms around her, knowing that it was for this very moment that I've been sent down to earth. So notice the story picks up in verse 25. The woman said, I know that the Messiah called Christ is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. And then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. I am he. I'm the one you've been waiting for. I'm the one you've been trying to find. I'm the one you've been climbing religious ladders to encounter. I'm the one you've been reading about, hoping for. I'm the one. I love this moment because it's so spectacular. Jesus, until this moment, kept his identity such a secret from just about everybody. He wouldn't reveal who he really was to the powerful or the influential or the leaders of that day, who probably had a lot more clout than her. No, he chose to meet this woman, broken, who was feeling disqualified, rejected, isolated, all by herself, wouldn't even travel with a crew of people. He chose to meet her in Samaria in the unlikeliest of moments, and he encountered her, and boom, when she confessed to her desperation, he offered her the greatest revelation to ever hit planet Earth. I'm the Messiah. I'm Jesus. And what so many people were blinded to, she's now open to. Why her? Why now? Why in this moment would Jesus fully disclose who he really was? I think it's because who he was is exactly what she needed in that moment. Who he was exactly what she needed. Who Jesus is exactly what you need. It's what I need. We're broken, we're thirsty, we're longing for something. And in this woman's life, Jesus says, I'm the one you've been longing for, and I can do for you what no 6 men could ever do for you. Because I'm not here to get from you, I'm here to give to you. I'm not demanding something from you. I'm offering my life freely as a living water that never satisfies to you, because simply I love you and I care about you and I want to restore every part of who you are. When you behold Jesus, you meet this kind of unconditional love. Unconditional love is when somebody knows everything about you and still fully, freely accepts you. They know everything about your past, present, and your future, and they still accept you as you are. And here Jesus accepted this woman not because of a future version of herself or a better version of herself. No, as she was, as broken, as tired, as thirsty as she was, Jesus said, I will receive you, I will fill you, I will refresh you, I will revive every part of who you are. This woman came to Jesus, wanted to hide away her story. because her story was full of condemnation and guilt. But this encounter with Jesus, the grace of God, this encounter with grace rewrote her entire story. The cloud that she was been living under was removed. The guilt, the shame, the condemnation was immediately broken as she met this Messiah who loved her for her, nothing else but for her. And so she says in verse 28, then leaving the water jar, the woman went back to the town and she said to the people, come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? So they came out of the town and made their way to him, or toward him. I think it's fascinating. Her whole life, she's been running away from people. Her whole life, she's been hiding. Her whole life, she's been trying to be isolated. But one encounter with Jesus, and she is running to the very people she's been running away from. Something has already happened in this one encounter with grace. The past that she's been hiding from, the past that she's been weighed down with, has now simply turned around into being a proof that this man I just met, who just told me everything I ever did, I believe he's the Messiah, because this man can take any story, any mess, any wreckage, any damage, any wound, and in his hands, all of it can be made brand new again. And this is the wonder of God's grace. He makes you whole, no matter the depth of your well, no matter the times, no matter the frequency of your addiction and sin. He takes what you've been running from, redefines it, and makes you brand new. As the story unfolds over the next few chapters, this woman who was given less value than a donkey goes out and wins an entire town to Jesus. There's a revival that breaks out because, like we said last week with Isaiah, God didn't just want to save Isaiah, he wanted to send Isaiah. And here in this moment, God gets a hold of this woman's life and she becomes the most incredible witness for the gospel. And tonight I want to tell you, maybe you're dry, you're thirsty, wherever you're at, if you will just open up your soul to the Lord, he will fill it. Maybe you're physically exhausted, maybe you're emotionally drained, maybe you're spiritually dry. I don't know where you're at tonight, but I know someone who promises to be a living water, who will never let you down. Maybe you've had a misunderstanding of Jesus your whole life. You thought God didn't want to deal with your mess. You thought he wouldn't want to deal with my brokenness, my sin, my shame. And you thought God was trying to pursue you to pay you back. I got good news for you. He's not pursuing you to pay you back. He's pursuing you to win you back. He's pursuing you to bring you back. He wants you to know, I've been sitting on your well. I never left, and I won't ever leave. You might be all alone. You might be in a room like this, but feeling totally isolated. Jesus is sitting on your well, whatever that might be. And nothing you do could ever chase him away. Nothing you do could ever put you outside of the arm reach of God. He's waiting patiently for you because the door of grace is still open. But there is a day where that door of grace closes and it'll be too late. But tonight, that door, that season, that era of grace is extended wide open to you. He knows you fully and says, come if you want a new life. He's glorious. He's patient with you. He offers you the gift of a new life, of a satisfaction you can't find anywhere else. Maybe some of you are drinking from this fountain already, and you know you've tasted the goodness of God. A lot of you have been a part of this incredible flow of God's grace. Your immediate response is to go back to your coworkers, to go back to your classmates, because there are thousands of young adults in our region who go to bed tonight just to wake up tomorrow to drink from the same Jacob's well, a man-made well again tomorrow morning, and they're doing this every day, and they're growing deeper and deeper into depression, anxiety, hopelessness. We got to be the ones that say, look, can you meet a man who's changed me? Can you meet this Jesus who took me as I was broken, as I was lost and hopeless? Just meet him, give him a chance, come see him for yourself. Come to Tuesday night, come, let's just engage in this Christ the Son together. Perhaps he could be what you've been looking for. Perhaps he could be the Savior, this fulfillment, the satisfaction you've been longing for. We've all got something to do tonight. We've all got a response. And Christ for both is sitting at the well saying, go, bring somebody back with you. Or saying, come, taste of this grace for the first time. Would you stand with me tonight? I don't know what label you've been living under. I don't know your story. But I know the story of Jesus and this woman. He broke through every boundary, every barrier, every expectation, every religious taboo, every cultural taboo, just to get to one. Because he's after the one. And he's after you this evening. This is a moment where the floodgates of heaven are open. And God is saying, you've got a need, I can meet it. Is your soul thirsty? Are you longing? Are you desiring something more? What's your well that you've been coming to every day? Are you willing to leave the jars behind? Because you can't do both. You can't do both. You can't keep the jars, hoping to one day get back to Jacob's well and still try out Jesus. Now there is this moment of faith. It's a moment of decision where you're saying, God, I'm dropping the jars. It's just like this. I'm dropping all of plan Bs. I'm dropping my plans. I'm dropping whatever I need to just to run hard after you. And in that moment, you were satisfied. Would you bow your heads with me? Father, tonight is the moment for somebody to meet Jesus at their well. There is no one better than you. We're not who our past relationships have said we are. We're not who our rejection letters have said we are. We're not who our parents said we are. The people who walked out on us, abused us, hurt us, we're not who they say we are. We are who this Messiah says we are. Chosen, child of the King. So tonight, will you open our eyes wide again to behold this one? God, we've got so many misplaced identity and affections in our own heart. But tonight, may we behold this man at the well who is patient, who gives us truth and grace. And may we be changed. Just as you took this broken lady and transformed her into an incredible witness of the gospel who is talked about 2,000 years later, you've got a plan for our brokenness and our mess. So we drop the jars tonight and we run after you. Let's continue to worship.